The carpet muted my steps as I walked down the hallway, the hum of laughter and clinking glasses drifting through the double doors at the end. A banner stretched across the ballroom entrance, 21 years of success. Inside, I caught a glimpse of champagne towers stacked like crystal skyscrapers and Evan Carlisle, grinning at the center of flashing cameras. Ms. Whitaker, he'll see you now, one of his assistants said briskly, ushering me into the corner office. Evan lounged behind his desk, tumbler of whiskey in hand, his designer suit catching the glow of the city skyline behind him. Without preamble, he slid a thick envelope across the polished wood. Termination of employment, the heading read in bold. "You've been fine, Mara," he said, his smirk sharpened by the amber liquid in his glass. "But not essential. Anyone could do what you do." He raised the tumbler as though toasting my dismissal. I forced my grip to steady as I folded the letter. Security stood outside, a silent reminder that this was not up for negotiation. Evan tapped his tablet, spinning it toward me. Slides gleamed on the screen charts and bullet points pulled word for word from my strategy reports. "Leave me your notes before you go. I'll be highlighting your department in my speech tonight. Optics. You understand." My chest tightened. He wasn't just firing me, he was about to parade my work as his triumph. I swallowed, managed a clipped nod, and turned toward the door. The swell of music from the ballroom pushed through the walls, louder now, as if mocking the silence in my chest. Just before I stepped out, a folder on his desk caught my eye. Thick, sealed. Its label typed in bold, "Sponsor Settlement Addendum Confidential." Evan's hand darted to shuffle papers over it, too late to erase the image from my mind. The laughter outside swelled into applause as another wave of guests arrived. My fingers clenched tighter around the letter. I walked past the waiting guard, down the hallway, and out of sight, carrying more than just the humiliation he'd handed me. And as the ballroom erupted in cheers for Evan Carlisle, I realized I might have just seen the crack that could split his entire celebration wide open. I closed the apartment door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, letting the silence wrap around me. Pixel trotted over, tail brushing my leg, her small body reminding me that at least one creature in this world still depended on me without judgment. I set the envelope on the kitchen table, its heavy weight a cruel souvenir from the night. I pulled open the drawer where I kept scraps of my life's work, sticky notes covered in shorthand, color-coded calendars, printed emails with scribbles in the margins. To anyone else it looked like clutter, but I knew the order buried in the chaos. This was my architecture, the invisible net that held together 6 years of client relationships. Bristol's CFO. He preferred calls on Tuesday mornings before his board prep. Wexford Bio's product team. They needed quarterly updates framed as collaborative check-ins, not sales pitches. And Wyatt's CEO. He signed renewals only after receiving a handwritten note on heavy paper, the kind his late father once used in correspondence. Details so small most executives dismissed them, but I had built an entire living ecosystem out of these rhythms. Evan had called it hand-holding. He said the real genius was in product vision and market strategy. But without these threads, every bold launch would unravel. I gathered the scraps into neat piles, sliding them into a black binder I hadn't touched in years. My hands moved slowly, deliberately, as if I were packing away parts of myself. I wasn't saving the notes out of spite. I needed clarity. If the company couldn't see my value, I would keep the record for someone who could. Pixel hopped onto the chair beside me, watching as if she sensed the gravity of the moment. I stroked her head, my mind replaying Evan's words. Anyone could do what you do. He had no idea what it meant to anticipate a client's silence, to hear in a delayed reply the signal of doubt, to mend it with a timely reminder of loyalty. I closed the binder with a quiet snap. Without my architecture, their loyalty would fray. The company didn't know it yet, but the collapse had already begun. And still, one question gnawed at me. Why did Evan demand my system notes for his speech? Unless he needed them to cover a secret even bigger than my firing. The shrill buzz of my phone yanked me awake. Light spilled across the blinds, and I squinted at the screen. 37 missed calls. My chest tightened as I scrolled through the notifications. Zoe's name popped up first, followed by 3 frantic messages. Bristol's furious. Evan's demanding your cadence maps. Wexford Bio just escalated a complaint. Do I give Evan your number? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering but unwilling to type a reply. Pixel meowed softly from the foot of the bed, but even her familiar comfort couldn't blunt the sting. They had always said my job was replaceable. Yet less than 12 hours after escorting me out, the walls were already buckling. I set the phone down, trying to breathe past the knot in my throat. But then another vibration rattled the nightstand, an email with the subject line, R.E. Evans 21-year slide due not forward. It wasn't meant for me. The chain included PR managers, legal counsel, and an unfortunate keystroke that had dropped my name into the CC line. Against my better judgment, I opened the attachments. The first was a draft of Evan's speech, the one he would give beneath that champagne tower and the glowing banner. My eyes moved over the lines he had written. Our unmatched record 21 consecutive years of client retention. Words polished and rehearsed, meant to dazzle reporters and investors. The second attachment made my stomach turn. A scanned settlement addendum, signed by a shell vendor controlled quietly by Evan. Buried clauses revealed a game of smoke and mirrors clients paid for short-term contract extensions, structured as if they were multi-year renewals. On paper, it kept the streak alive. In reality, it was deception dressed as celebration. I leaned back in my chair, the phone trembling in my hand. The party hadn't just been about his ego, it was a smokescreen for fraud. His father's legacy, the company's reputation. All of it now rested on lies. The weight of what I held pressed down heavier than the binder on my kitchen table. Evan wasn't simply arrogant, he was cornering the entire company with his scheme. And now the evidence sat in my inbox, waiting for me to decide whether to delete it, share it, or place it in the hands of someone powerful enough to act. I chose the cafe carefully off Wisconsin Avenue. Quiet. The kind of place where politicians conducted private conversations under the cover of clinking cups. I arrived early, nerves humming, and ordered nothing. The air smelled of roasted beans and rain-soaked pavement drifting in through the open door. When Lydia Grant walked in, she didn't need introduction. Authority carried itself with her tall, precise, every step deliberate. She waved off the barista and came straight to my table. Without asking, she ordered for both of us. Black with 1 sugar. She said smoothly. My eyes widened, and she gave the faintest smile. I make it a point to study the people worth meeting. She wasted no time. Show me what you built, not what he stole. I opened my laptop and pulled up the dashboards I'd hidden away. The charts pulsed in real time. Nodes flickering red where communication had lapsed since I left. I walked her through the architecture how I tracked decision rhythms, pressure points before negotiations, and the subtle trust markers that determined whether a contract renewed or dissolved. It's not a process, I told her, leaning forward. It's an ecosystem. Relationships that respond, shift, and strengthen if nurtured. Without it, the company's client base is a house of cards. Lydia studied the screens without interruption, her gaze sharp. When I finished, she stirred her coffee slowly and said, 21 years ago, I brought Evan in as a symbol of continuity. His father built the foundation, but I knew Evan lacked depth. I feared this day might come. She set down her spoon. What you've built, Mara. He can't even perceive. He thrives on other people's brilliance, but this isn't something he can appropriate. That's why he's unraveling. For a moment, validation washed over me. Then Lydia's voice hardened. But we can't move yet. The board needs undeniable proof evidence of collapse that even investors can't ignore. Until then, I can't act. Can you hold steady?" Her words settled heavily. To wait meant letting the company burn further, knowing colleagues would be pulled down with it. Yet moving too soon could bury me instead. I closed the laptop as the weight of her question pressed against me, the decision already reshaping the next step I would have to take. The call came late in the evening, just as I was pouring hot water over a tea bag. I saw his name flash on the screen and almost let it ring out, against my better judgment. I answered. "Mara," Evan said, his voice taut, strained beneath the same arrogance he always carried. "We need to put this behind us. Come back. Same role. 12% raise. Bring the system with you. HR will draft the paperwork tonight." I didn't respond immediately. The hiss of the kettle filled the silence until he pressed on. "Look, you had your moment, but the company can't function without what you built. This is your chance to be reasonable." Minutes later, an email appeared in my inbox, a non-disclosure agreement already marked with his digital signature. I skimmed the pages, my eyes catching on the poison embedded in the legalese. Retroactive ownership of all methodologies, binding me to silence about any past contributions, shielding him from liability. In one stroke, my years of work would become his property, and I would become a footnote erased from my own history. I set the phone back to my ear. "No." His laughter was sharp, almost mocking. "Don't be dramatic. This is a good deal. You walk back in, collect a raise, and no one needs to know about our little hiccup." I let my voice cut clean through his bluster. "I'm not returning, Evan. I'm starting a consultancy, relationship mesh lab. My work, my clients, my terms." Silence crackled for half a beat before his composure shattered. "You a consultancy. No one hires a glorified secretary with no track record. You need me." "You've always needed me." I smiled to myself, unseen, steady. "We'll see." Before he could spew another insult, I ended the call. The screen went black, and for the first time in years, I felt unshackled. His mask was slipping, his empire unraveling thread by thread, and he knew it. But as I set the phone down, another thought crept in. If I walked away completely, what leverage would I have when he inevitably dragged my name through the mud to save himself? By midweek, the spiral was impossible to ignore. Trade blogs buzzed with rumors about settlement irregularities. Anonymous leaks fanned speculation. And fragments of that email I'd received surfaced online. Headlines questioned whether Pike Dynamics had inflated its client retention streak. By noon, the stock had dropped 9%. Messages poured into my phone, most of them panicked. Zoe's text stopped me cold. "He's blaming you on record. Says you sabotaged the system." I stared at the words until my pulse steadied. Of course he would. What better scapegoat than the woman he fired hours before the cracks appeared? I slipped the phone into my pocket, refusing to answer. But it buzzed again. This time, it was a call. The name lit up Hal Porter. I answered cautiously. "Hal." His voice came warm but edged with disbelief. "Mara, tell me this isn't true. We've stayed with Pike Dynamics all these years because of you. If you're gone, so are we. Where are you headed?" The sincerity in his tone hit deeper than I expected. Hal wasn't bluffing. Bristol had been our largest account, and if they walked, others would follow. I pressed the bridge of my nose, searching for the right words. "I'm exploring my options." "Then keep me posted," he said firmly. "We'd rather follow you than watch him run this company into the ground." When the call ended, I stared at the dark screen, a rush of clarity coursing through me. The seed of independence was no longer hypothetical. Clients were ready to follow me. Meanwhile, inside those glossy boardrooms, Evan flailed. Reports filtered back through Zoe how he stormed in, waving charts, shouting that I was blackmailing him, demanding immediate legal action. The board listened without reaction. Lydia Grant, calm as steel. Let him rant before quietly instructing auditors to pull financial records tied to his sponsor partnerships. Evan believed he was burying me under accusations. He couldn't see the truth that every furious word only dug him deeper. And as my phone lit up with yet another client contact asking where I was headed, I realized his spiral had only just begun, and I no longer needed to stop it. Friday morning. I walked into the building I'd left less than a week ago. Whispers followed me from the lobby to the elevator, eyes wide as if I were a ghost. I carried only one thing in my hand, the black notebook. Evan's assistant barely met my gaze before waving me through. He stood at the window when I entered. Shoulders tight but smile rehearsed. "Mara," he said warmly, as if the last few days hadn't happened. "I knew you'd come to your senses." He gestured toward the chair opposite his desk. I didn't sit. Instead, I placed the notebook on the desk and flipped it open. Page after page revealed intricate webs of lines and notes Bristol's decision-makers. Which ones stalled approvals and which ones moved projects forward. The legal department's rhythm of reviewing contracts only on Thursdays. The product team's habit of scheduling late afternoon calls because mornings were locked for sprint planning. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is what you fired." He leaned over, flipping a few pages with exaggerated impatience. "So what? Once you teach this to the team, anyone can replicate it. You've turned handshakes into homework. That's not genius. Mara, it's clerical." I snapped the binder shut, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "That's exactly the problem. You think this is paperwork. It's a living architecture woven through years of trust and nuance, and you never valued it enough to learn." His mask cracked. "You're walking into dangerous territory. This is extortion." "No," I replied, slipping the notebook back into my bag. "Extortion is when someone demands payment to stay silent. I'm not asking for anything. I've already registered my consultancy. Relationship Mesh Lab. Clients are waiting." His eyes narrowed, anger flickering beneath the calm facade. I leaned closer. "Oh, and Lydia knows about Walter, your father's predecessor. History repeats itself. Evan. Except this time, the board has receipts." The smile finally slipped from his face. I turned for the door, leaving him with nothing but the weight of his unraveling empire. And as I stepped back into the hallway, I knew the next move would no longer be mine. It would be the board's. Monday morning dawned gray, the kind of sky that seemed to press down on the city. I sat in a small cafe across from the headquarters, nursing a cup of coffee while messages buzzed on my phone. The board had convened behind closed doors at 10 sharp. Within the hour, fragments began to leak. Evan had opened the meeting by blaming me outright, calling me a secretary with lucky timing. Reporters who camped outside caught wind, and by the time the words hit the wires, social media was ablaze. But then Lydia made her move. A dossier slid across the boardroom table documentation of decades of appropriation. Sponsor kickbacks tied to the so-called anniversary gala, and the fraudulent settlement agreements propping up the myth of 21 consecutive years of client retention. Her timing was surgical. By late morning, industry blogs had the story. Clients spoke up next. Bristol confirmed they would only negotiate if I was involved. Wexford echoed them. Even Wyatt's CEO, never one to give interviews, told a reporter that my departure was the reason they were reconsidering their contracts. The narrative flipped faster than I could have imagined. At noon, the official statement broke. Evan Carlisle was suspended pending investigation. A legacy built on borrowed credit crumbled in real time. Headlines scrolled across every screen in the cafe CEO's son fumbles 21-year legacy. I set my coffee down just as my phone lit up. Lydia's name appeared. "Mara," she said, her voice calm, almost warm. "We want your consultancy, not as staff, but as partner. The board has already approved the budget triple your old salary. First contract is ready." I leaned back, absorbing the weight of her words. A week ago, I was escorted out with a cardboard box. Now, the same company that dismissed me was offering not a role, but a partnership for a long moment. I let the silence linger between us, the roar of passing traffic outside filling the space. Power, for the first time, sat firmly in my hands. I told her I would think about it, and when I ended the call, my reflection in the cafe window looked steadier than it had in years, already preparing for what came next. When Lydia called back, I laid out my conditions, clearly full independence for my consultancy, transparent attribution for every system element I implemented, mandatory training for leadership so they couldn't bury the knowledge again, and a public acknowledgement that the architecture was mine. There was no hesitation on her end. "The board will sign," she said. "We need you more than we need him." By the end of that week, my phone buzzed with the official documents, my terms printed in black ink with the signatures of every board member lined across the final page. I signed my name once, steady, and felt the weight of 6 years lift. The next day, Evan stood under a wall of flashing cameras, his face drained of its usual polish. The press conference had been forced upon him. He muttered the carefully scripted line. Mistakes were made, each word cracking against the silence of the room. Reporters hurled questions, but he dodged them all, the veneer of authority gone. From the back row, I watched without moving, no need to say a word. My silence was louder than any accusation. 6 months later, my consultancy had grown into something real. 7 employees, each handpicked, worked across 3 industries. Bristol Industries became our anchor client, followed quickly by 2 more who had walked away from Pike Dynamics in the fallout. The office we rented in Arlington was modest, but the energy inside it felt like a new beginning each morning. And Pike, the company survived, not through Evan's vision, but under interim leadership that finally valued relationship governance as much as innovation. They implemented my framework openly, with proper training and resources, and slowly clawed back stability. As for Evan Carlisle, the once golden heir, he disappeared into quiet exile. No triumphant returns, no glowing interviews, just a name permanently attached to scandal. His 21-year celebration was remembered not as a milestone, but as the night his legacy collapsed. I often thought about what revenge meant. It wasn't in tearing him down, though he fell hard enough on his own. It was in building something he could never fake, something he couldn't steal. I had simply stopped holding up his story, and the whole facade toppled. The sharpest revenge wasn't shouting back, it was walking away while the empire they stole crumbled without me.